This podcast represents my opinion and the opinion of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I am not establishing a patient-physician relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions you may have.
Welcome, everybody. This is Producer Seth. This is Not Your Doc Pod with our great friend and host, Dr. Chuck Tadros. And, of course, Vanessa is still out. I forgot to say that in the last episode, but everybody knows by now.
Should be coming back soon.
When they hear my voice, they immediately turn it off and say, there's still no Vanessa. No, I hope that's not true.
Vanessa will be back with us shortly. Her maternity leave, she's having a good time, I think, but she's going to come join us again soon.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
It takes all this pressure off of me.
No, you're doing fantastic. Are you kidding?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. So you had some chores to do over the weekend.
Yeah.
And that's going to kind of lead us into our topic. Doc,
right.
You want to tell us a little about that? What were you supposed to do, and did you get it done?
Well, yeah. The quick answer is I was supposed to clean out my garage so I can get my second car, and I got 1/20th of the way through it. And and before this even, I recognized that I have this what in digital currency they call it a double spend problem, where you spend the same amount of money more than one way. It's just a way to misperceive time and money and energy. So where people actually think that they have time, energy, and money to do all the stuff on their to-do list and on the weekend, but they don't even get they barely get started, and certainly if they do get started, they don't have a fraction of the energy or time or gumption to money to get things done. So this is a reminder to me, this cognitive fallacy, this belief that some of our patients have, especially whenever we have patients with depression who have a hard time estimating time, money, distance, etc., that they have misperceptions about these things, and it becomes frustrating. And it makes us feel terrible about ourselves, but it's a recurring theme, and somehow I see people, including me, that just don't learn from it. So I'm just going to talk about that for just a few minutes here. This is the misperception of our time, energy, money, resources. Energy and money are a type of resources in order to get stuff done. So if I'm going to read a book, you say, well, I'll do it this weekend. But what I don't recognize is that I'm going to get up late on Saturday, and then by the time I get up late, I'm going to want to do I want to do other things that are more fun, and then somebody's going to need my services for something. Then I'm going to be too tired. I'm going to take a nap, and maybe at 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I may want to crack open the book, but now it's too late. Let me watch a movie, and then it'll be Sunday, and et cetera, and then we'll end up on Monday. We have not even cracked the book open, or we've only read a few words. So that's part of the problem. It's a recurring theme that we see. You say, well, it's procrastinators, it's other people, but actually I think it's deeper than that. I think it's a misperception of a variety of things, including energy and resources. People say, well, put the most prominent thing that you want to eat the frog is the name of the book from many years ago. Do the ugliest, hardest, worst thing that you have to get done first. That way, anything after that is not as important, that may fall off your list, it was not going to be as important anyway. So you did the first thing, and that's fine. That's one way of doing it. Prioritize. But the problem is then you've only eaten the frog, and oftentimes you've only eaten part of the frog, and then you've not only not eaten the rest of the frog, but you've not done anything else after that frog. So some people argue, do all the simple things first, the easy stuff first. Yes, you may leave the most important things to the end, but now you have time, energy in order to focus on the worst thing, the hardest thing, which is unfortunately sometimes the most important thing. That's the other way of approaching it. But sometimes you run out of energy and time, right? By the time in the evening, you've cleaned the house, you've gone out, you've taken a nap, but now you've lost the gumption to do things. But these are variations on the same theme, that we have misperception of our resources, our external and internal resources. So kind of the way I do this, instead of doing a to-do list, I actually schedule it. I put it on my calendar. If you're going to get up on this day, not every day you get up on the same time. I like to do that. By the way, that's one of the tricks, is to get up the same day, even if you don't have to. Whether in some of the first few minutes or hours could be self-care if it needs to, if you don't have anything else to do that's pressing. But the end result is to actually schedule it. And you have a to-do list on the side that's humongous, but I'm going to schedule it. So as I walked in this morning, I see peeling paint on my entrance. So I've been thinking about it since 9 months. Now I'm going to put it in my schedule, and I'm going to make it practical, so that I do it in sections. So in order to get my paint together or go get the paint, it's not the same day that I do the paint, because these are separate things, and so I'll lead myself in segment piecemeal and usually I do it geographically. If I'm going to be in the basement, I'm going to grab select things and I'm going to bring it upstairs and put it in a place out of the way. If I'm going to go out, I'm going to go to Ace Hardware or Lowe's, then I'm going to take certain paint chips with me to go get matched, so that I'm not doing everything at once and assuming that I'm going to get everything done at the same day. If I need to pull out a ladder that's behind a bunch of junk, I do that separately from some of the other things, because I'll be in the garage. So these are the ways that I find that doing it, and understanding that I'm not going to be able to paint the whole thing in one day, that I'm going to have to segment it out, and I put it on my calendar mixed in with all my other responsibilities, my medical responsibilities, my family responsibilities, all the other things like that. And that way I can, and I stick to the plan. That means that I'm going to have to include time to prep and to clean up, because once again, it's not going to be done in one day. And I may have to ask for help, by the way, in which case I have to schedule that. But those are kind of some of the ways. One of the ways is if you get a bonus get a bonus in terms of a check, and you say, oh my gosh, I'm going to do the roof and go take a trip and get the car fixed. You don't have enough money for all these things. So first of all, you take money out for taxes, all the necessities, and then that leaves you with a lot less than you thought or you predicted. And then you're going to have to pick from there. And then you're going to have to say out loud that certain things are going to still be undone. But that you're going to be able to do, one small piece of the 3 or 5 things. And part of it is to be able to take the ego out of it, that like I ought to be able to all these things. I know how to do all these things, but the answer is that they have not been done before. You've not done them. They've not been done. And therefore you're going to have to take the ego out of it and say, I'm not going to be able to do it as well or as much as I thought, but I'm going to be able to do this piece. That's the first thing. Ask for help is the other piece. Those are kind of the big things that I talk to people about. The to-do list is kind of a death. Is just a death knell. So this calendar schedule, and you have to abide by the calendar. And sometimes the calendar does not have to be multiple hours. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. Because you don't have time, energy to go beyond 15 minutes to do select things. And don't stop and do 16 other things along the way. If I go to the basement and I see 16 things that need to be rearranged, I'll still go just get the paint can and blah 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 and get that done. And I'll put it on my to-do list somewhere in the bottom that I have to rearrange the basement. But that does not help me get the painting done for the front. So once again, don't recognize your time, energy. All your resources are limited. That some things will take precedence, and sometimes it's other people's. What's on other people's schedules takes precedence, not necessarily what you want to do, but what your spouse or the IRS needs you to do. That takes precedence over what you want to do. And then recognize that what's left over sometimes is not as much as you want, not as much energy and resources as you wanted, and to take the ego out of it. And recognize it's not going to be as great as you wanted, but that you got certain things knocked off your calendar. And that those small pats on the back add up.
Reward yourself.
Yeah, small pats. It's certainly not I need to sit down and do big projects. Some people are big project people. That's great if you can get that done. Most of us are not. We don't even, the big project kind of makes us sour, and we don't even start on the big project. Therefore, not even the big project doesn't get done, and none of the small projects get done. So you feel really guilty by the end of the weekend.
You ever have so much to do, you just say screw it and don't do any of it because the anxiety is just too much.
And most of the people say you're dumb or you're lazy. And it's something, I'm just going to tell you, you're exactly right. You hit it on the head. I think the vast majority of people are overwhelmed by the stack of papers that they have to go through, overwhelmed by the size of their lawn, or how much crabgrass they have to, they have to go out and manually pluck, or overwhelmed by, how many papers that they have to dig out of their back of their car in the garage and stuff in order to do their taxes and stuff like that. So, it's I think the anxiety and the embarrassment and stuff is much bigger than we realize. Yeah.
I'm going through that right now.
Sure.
I'm moving, plus I got work at the office. I've been going back and forth and trying to juggle that. And I found the best thing to do is just, set one day where you're like, I'm just going to focus on this and do a whole lot of that.
Yep.
The next day, I'm going to do a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
One day, I'm going to work ahead at the office.
Right.
Then the next day, instead of sitting behind a computer all day, I'm going to be up and moving around. I'm going to get a whole lot of moving done.
Right.
And you start to, see progress in both areas.
Yep.
But when you try to go back and forth, maybe some people are good at it, but personally, no.
Multitasking is not multitasking. It's serial tasking. That's the first thing. You stop one thing and move to another. That's serial tasking, not multi. You're not doing 3 and 4 things at once. You think you are because you're doing it in the same hour, but actually you're stopping one and moving the other. Every time you stop and start something, it robs you of lots of momentum. People severely underestimate. They look at efficiencies and this and that. What we really need to look at it, what gives you energy and where the momentum is. We should do the whole thing. I'm going to scribble it down. Energy and momentum, because those are big reasons for people to continue doing something. Is if it gives them energy, or doesn't rob them of too much energy, but gives them energy, and they're already doing it, and so you're on a roll. You hate to do the yard and this and that, but once you get the stuff out and the lawnmower started and this and that, you're on a roll. It's not still great, but you're better than you were, 30 minutes ago whenever you kind of dreaded trying to hunt up the stuff in your garage. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, you keep going back to that garage.
Yeah,
I can tell that's on your
garage,
mind.
The garage, I wanted to pull stuff out of the garage so I can have it kind of remodeled, and then I recognized it's too big of a bite, too big of a chunk, and so that's therefore the small bites, and I'm going to have to even take smaller bites. So part of it is to say, yep, you're going to have to take even smaller bites, but it'll get done. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey? Of
sure.
course you are. He's like the biggest financial expert in the world.
Yeah,
it seems
sure.
like.
Yeah, I've heard him.
Yeah, I worked at a radio station that carried his show.
Yes.
I didn't know Dave was syndicated, obviously, but it's pretty interesting if you at first I don't want to sit and listen to this guy yap about money forever, but he really pulls you in, and you start. He says so many things that will remind you of yourself when it comes to spending habits. So I strongly recommend people looking into him if you want some good financial advice.
Yep, he does a very nice job. I've heard him, and he does. Nothing he says is crazy.
I have his book. I might even read it someday. And then when I'm done, I might return it to my friend John that loaned it to me. So if you're listening, John,
I remind people that you don't have to read a book like you did as a kid from cover to cover. You can look at the index. You can look at the back and see. You can look at the beginning, first few paragraphs of each chapter section, and go to the end and read the last few paragraphs. And then you can go back and, if you want to, read from the beginning to the end.
Like I did with book reports. I'd get the beginning and the end, and the teacher's like, "Well, you seem to have read it."
But part of it as an adult, we're not kids. We don't have to eat our peas if we don't want to. So if you don't have to read a book, you can buy Audible. You can do Audible. You can rent it. You can get it from the library.
Can you solve a debate? I had this debate with a friend last night.
Not that I know anything, but
okay, so she claims to have read 50 books in a year, but they're all Audible. Like she reads them while she drives or while she cleans. I go, that's not reading a book. That's listening to a podcast. A book you sit down and you get rid of all the rest of the stimuli in the world.
You can't be doing other things except maybe walking on a treadmill whenever you're learning.
Yeah, or the exercise bike. I'm a fan of that. But you basically break yourself off from everything else and you isolate yourself. I mean, you focus on that book, and it's like a exercise. Just basically, looking at the words and interpreting them as you read them. That's not the same as
I would
listening.
agree.
You'll retain information either way.
Right. That's a good question. I'm going to have to ask some, I have friends and family that read books, literally read books a lot. But if they're driving, they'll do podcasts or audibles on a book or a podcast. But you're right. They actually sit down and read books. It's usually paper. Sometimes they're on Kindle and stuff like that. So I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. What do you say?
I think it's the same as listening to a podcast. Because like if you're going to listen to Joe Rogan, you're not going to be like, I've read every Joe Rogan book this week. No, you listen to him talk all week. It's just not the same. I think it's a better exercise for your brain.
By the way, for people who are distracted easily like I am, or people with ADHD, sometimes it's good to have the book and an auditory, whether it's from the library. By the way, we underestimate the libraries and stuff, we forget that our libraries have lots of resources, not only hardback books and paperback books, but also they have books on tape and all sorts of stuff like that you can get for free. But the quick answer is, so you actually have somebody, like while you're eyeing the book, the words, somebody's reading it out loud to you. It seems lazy, but you're right. The more ways that you, sensory inputs that you have for a piece of information, the more likely you're going to retain it. Yeah.
It's obviously convenient if you're trying to save time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember as a kid, we had the little record. You'd play a little 7-inch record in a book, and they'd read, and then it'd ding when it was time to turn the page, and you could follow along. But I want to go back to Dave Ramsey real quick, because he gave some advice once that I thought was really cool, and you've probably heard of this. Spend cash, not your debit card or any kind of digital transaction. The thing is, when people are swiping a debit card, it's real easy.
That's right.
You're just swiping away, and you're not even watching it add up.
That's
but
right.
if you have cash on you, you're watching the cash disappear, and you will slow down as it starts to go. You'll be like, oh, look at my money going away.
That's right.
A debit card, you don't see that.
Well, casinos, you may remember years ago, they had the one-armed bandits where you had to actually take time to pull. You had to put a quarter in and a nickel in, and you had to pull, and you had to watch it spin. Then they went to of course, they went to tokens where you didn't feel like actual money going out of your hands. Then they eventually went to push buttons. So that you have it like a debit card and stuff like that, and you have push buttons. So what they're doing is making less friction for you to let go of your money.
It's like the opposite of what I was saying. They're trying to get you to spend that money by doing the exact opposite.
Try to remove you from the sense of the money going through your hands. Number one,
predatory.
It doesn't feel like money because it's a token, and it doesn't feel like money because it's a card. And before, it took a while for you to pull the one-armed bandit. Now you just push a button, push a button, push a button. And so the end result is that's exactly right. That's how you get addicted, whether it's alcohol or cocaine or whatever. You have to get the kick, the hit. If you had to wait 30 minutes for a hit, or you do something and it took 30 minutes for your brain would not associate the two together. But the closer you are between the action and the high or the buzz or the feeling, the more addictive anything is. So it's important to recognize. But absolutely no. Dave Ramsey has got good wisdom that I think.
You got some great wisdom yourself, Doc. Do you have? Speaking of that great wisdom, is there any more of it you'd like to share before you get back to cleaning that garage? Because I know you can't. You're just it's anxious to stop thinking about it.
It's interesting how some things hang over you for months to years, whenever it's never nearly as big as what you thought. So I just like to remind people of that. Is almost anything. It's not that it's not going to be painful, but the pain doesn't last nearly as long. Whether you're going to ask for a raise, or you're going to go in to get fired, or you're going to go in to leave work, or it's not nearly as long and painful as you predicted. Some things are, but the vast majority are not. So that's when you check yourself about, is it real? Does it matter? All these things, these questions that people ask about reality, checking reality, and reframing things. That's why you have friends and therapists and neighbors and spouses and partners to kind of check yourself, and that's oftentimes helpful. Yeah.
Well, you can read all of our books by listening to them at notyourdoc.com. That's where you can find the pod if you want to hit play and read it, or listen to. I still say it's the same as a podcast when you do that. But anyways, you can actually read. If you go to the website, you can read the blog.
That's right.
So we got past episodes, we got the blogs. You can contact us. You can also email us at notyourdocpod@gmail.com. Great episode, great advice, great wisdom, Doctor. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Seth. Thanks for being here.
Yep, thanks. We'll see you.
Bye-bye. This previous podcast represents my opinions and the opinions of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I'm not establishing a physician-patient relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions that you may have.